You know, the interesting thing, Ferndale ain't making him any, but neither's Pine.
That's what I said to Tom. How's Ferndale feeling him leaving? He said that's a good question.
Yeah, they ain't throwing any money on it, so.
I mean, I almost feel like I can't fight for Tom Gate anymore
Yeah.
because he did that.
Austin, Austin made a good mistake.
I don't think he just used Wood. I don't think he did that side.
No,
He just
I
was
know.
trying to get a better contract in
No,
return.
God, no.
But if somebody did whisper to him that you're not getting it, I understand it.
I think if somebody needs to whisper to
So, Eddie,
Hey, good. See you Tuesday?
absolutely. I'm excited. I wasn't going to come until I saw that your name was on. How was Europe?
Good.
Yeah.
Busy.
Where'd you go?
Everywhere, right? Germany, Switzerland, Italy.
Was it conference for work at all or just pleasure?
My wife's brother lives in Switzerland with his family, so chance to visit our nieces. So it was good. Yeah, but so we traveled with them too. So it was an adventure, but we went everywhere. We were on top of, well, not on top, but at the base of like the Matterhorn and Switzerland, and then
Good for you.
did all the crazy stuff you do in Italy, right? Milan, Florence, Pisa, that whole
He's
nine
a good
yards.
Italian here, so.
I don't know where we've met. I'm Alan Kroll.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm
Alan
sorry.
Nikrachowski.
I thought you guys knew each other. He's on the chamber board with me. He was
Gotcha.
president of the chamber.
Gotcha.
Chairman, what did you call it?
Chairman.
Chairman, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very good. You can shut that.
Huh?
Yeah, exactly. That's when the first interview starts, when we're doing intro.
Alan, you're 100% correct. This is so important that we hear.
Yes, I'm gonna walk you through all that.
Oh, hello, gentlemen.
Hi.
Mr. Mayor?
How are you?
Well, how are you?
First one's here.
He says I'm a 6 out of 10.
6? That's not bad.
I don't know if I'm improved or not.
Yeah.
Give me those momentarily. That's why we're starting at 12:30. All right. Hello, everyone. It's my honor to call to order the Royal Oak City Commission special meeting for Saturday, October 12th, 2024.
They can come in.
Our first order of business is going to be the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda that's been presented to us? We have a motion by Commissioner Macy, a second by Commissioner Colo. Any discussion on the motion? All right, with none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. We have an agenda. All right, Nate, you're up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor and fellow commissioners, for having us support you with the search process. We're going to do just a brief orientation so we're ready to go and manage these 2 interviews efficiently. We have 2 candidates in this process. You're going to find, as you've already known, different backgrounds, different styles. They've been through an extensive process to get to this point. They've done their applications, they've done questionnaires, they've been through an introductory interview with me. They've sat down with staff yesterday, they're with some stakeholders this morning. Now this is your turn to vet these candidates. We have this set up for 2 interviews of roughly 75 minutes each, and that's broken down into 13 fairly robust questions. If we give each question approximately 5 minutes each, That's going to leave you with about 10 minutes to go back and do some follow-ups if you want, or have some additional conversations or additional questions of each candidate. The only thing I would guide you on as you do your follow-ups or as you add additional questions at the end, just try to be consistent with your processes and with your line of thinking and questioning. To try to help keep us on task, I don't know if anybody's a soccer fan. My boy's a big soccer fan, so we're going to use yellow and red card. So if I put up the yellow card, we've got about 2 minutes. Put up the red card, we need to start transitioning to the next question. As far as in order of asking questions, I've seen this done a bunch of different ways. Personally, I feel the easiest way is to just start with one person, whether it's the mayor or it's someone on the end, and just work through and rotate the questions, rather than everybody trying to figure out, is this my question to ask or what have you. So I will leave that direction to you, Mr. Mayor. Keep in mind your job interview cheat sheet, the things we can or cannot ask during an interview under federal law. It's not uncommon for a candidate to offer up certain types of identifying information during the interview process. The best thing I can guide you on is just don't engage in that topic, transition on, but if they want to offer up the makeup of their family or whatever, that's totally their call, but it's not something that we would prod or want to look into. Last but not least, on my side, as you all know, we've had staff engagement yesterday through various roundtables. We gave the candidates a tour of the community, stopped at various sites. They had an opportunity to engage with various staff members. We're finishing up stakeholder roundtable this morning. I will be finishing up compiling that input. It will not have creative liberty from me. That's basically the notes from the folks that participated. I hope to have that all done and in your email box by the first half of tomorrow. If for some reason there is some delay, I'll certainly give you a heads up. Essentially what we're doing is compiling and giving you a set of data. Your job between the end of today's meeting and Tuesday morning is to compile that data in your mind and identify who you believe is the next city manager for the city of Royal Oak. With that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions, but certainly in these next few minutes, we definitely want to make sure, Mr. Mayor, we know who's going to start and how we're going to rotate the questions around.
Commissioner Macy?
Just clarifying, if there's a follow-up question within the question, the same person asks those. It's like a set, yes?
Any commissioner could ask a follow-up.
But
If we need,
some are stated in here.
yes, yes, thank you. There are follow-up questions on a couple of those items. Yes, I would just stick with that current commissioner asking that question.
Yeah, and I would say if there's a brief follow-up germane to the question at hand for clarity or whatever, I think that I'll just call on any commissioner that wants some clarity on a question. That's not a problem. Or clarity on an answer, rather.
And I'll do my best to help keep us on time and on track to make sure we get through all the questions.
That's it? Okay, where do we want to start when we do this?
Maybe start with you because you're going to give the welcome.
Who's doing the first question?
Okay, I can do that. And then we'll go, feels like we should go to the left.
Whatever.
Yeah, we'll do that. That'll be easier for me to keep track of just the way my brain's wired. Yeah, it'd be Brandon next, and then all the way down. Yeah, I don't know why that feels more natural to me. I don't.
Whatever for you.
Okay.
You're going to ask the number first question.
Yep. Okay.
So 3, 4, basically.
All right. Any other questions?
You have 4 minutes before we have the first candidate coming in if we do need a quick.
Yeah, just actually, you know what? We have kind of like 3 documents up here. I see 2 that are identical. I'm going to just use, for me, one of these as notes for one candidate and this one for the other candidate.
So what you should have in front of you is an interview packet.
Yeah.
And you should have a set of questions for each candidate as well as all of their application materials. Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah. Let me just see if it's, oh, you know
Should
what?
look something
okay,
like
that
this.
goes, actually, yeah, we have kind of Lots of stuff. Okay, so yes, we have all of the above times 2 with the blank questions.
Okay, great.
All right. Mr. Gaccio, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Thank you for being here today.
Of course.
We're grateful. I know you spent a lot of time with our city yesterday, kind of getting a tour, checking things out. Hopefully, we've impressed all of our candidates yesterday in terms of what an amazing city we are. And just grateful that you took the time to apply, that you've gone through or are going through the interviewing process. And we know how valuable your time is, and we're grateful that you're here with us today so we can learn a little bit more about you, your background, and help us make the best informed decision as we move forward. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, are we good to start?
Mayor, does he have a microphone?
Oh,
Is it on?
Mr. Gaccio, if you want to just push that, I can't tell if it's on or not.
Green light?
Oh, that sounds like it's on.
Hello?
Yep,
Test.
that works. Okay, so you've been informed of how we're going to kind of do this process. We're each going to take turns asking you questions. There might be a couple questions that we want a little bit more clarity on, and we might and will definitely ask a few follow-up things here and there. But for the most part, we'll kind of try to touch on a number of different areas to learn more about you.
Sure.
And we'll be going around the table, and that's simple.
Okay.
All right. So I have the honor of asking the first question today, which is really more of a request. Can you please take the first few minutes to tell us a little bit about why you applied for this position and about yourself without rehashing your entire resume?
Yeah, why this position? Been the city manager with Ferndale for about 14 years, so I'm keenly aware of Royal Oak. Obviously, we have a great professional relationship with your staff. I've had that for quite some time and with the community. So I'm very aware of the likenesses of both of our community and the likenesses of the commonality and the challenges that the Southern Oakland County faces. I have a pretty good understanding of that. But growth, number one, as I just told the previous interview, growth opportunity is tremendous for me, and I always seek to grow. And this looks like a great opportunity. And two, I believe Royal Oak, as I also just mentioned in my previous interview, is an anchor. It's an anchor of Oakland County. I think it's, I think that's pretty clear when you look at a map. It's pretty clear when you look at the economy. It's pretty clear when you see Corewell Health, and Henry Ford. But, professionally, I don't always know that I see Royal Oak leading in the front. So I'll give you an example. So looking at Woodward and Corridor, I see Ferndale who leads a lot in Ferndale, but Ferndale can only do so much, right? We're a smaller community. There's a little bit that we can do in terms of impacting or affecting policy on the corridor. So for transportation or transit, for example. Royal Oak, that's an anchor. You guys can do much more, and it sounds like there's some interest in general forward-looking change, and I think, I'd like to be a part of that.
Thank you for...
I'm sorry, I didn't answer about myself real quick, because I can't neglect my family. So first, I am Joe Gaccio. I've been with Ferndale for about 14 years. I've been the city manager for 6. I was appointed in 2019. I am married to Danny Cole, if you're watching. And we have 2 kids. I have a daughter, Maya, she's 7, and my son, Lewin, he's 5. I bring this up because I believe strongly in work-life integration. I don't necessarily seek out work-life balance. I believe the personal self and the professional self are intertwined, and I embrace how they complement each other. So as a father, my children have taught me much about patience, the importance of temperance, the importance of joy and love. And honestly, they're they're pushing me to be a more temperate and patient person has positively affected my style as a leader and my desire to grow and develop as a professional, whether that be how to lead teams, how to have candid conversations, how to have discussions, how to pursue emotional intelligence as a priority, has certainly improved me as a dad and as a partner and as a friend, I think generally a human being. So the personal and the professional are intertwined. And so that work-life integration is a key, I think, trait for me. And I'll spare you the rest, but that's it.
Well, thank you for that introduction. How do you define your approach to leadership, and why is it a match for WROK?
Yeah, so my leadership style, I'd say I lead with two leaderships. There's many leadership styles, and not all styles are right for every occasion. I lead with affiliative leadership style, and affiliative means team-oriented culture building. So I believe strongly in the power dynamics of a team. I don't believe that a strong individual can do much by themselves. I have little value. My team generates all the value. I'm really just the conductor. And so I believe strongly in the affiliative. I'm also, you could say, democratic management style in that I welcome input. I think it's important to understand all perspectives from a management experience as well as from an equity perspective. You got to really understand where people are coming from, how they're viewing things, and how those decisions might be influenced by those perspectives. But at the end of the day, I'm also the city manager, so I'm paid to make decisions. So, I'd like to collect all the information that I can and all the perspectives that I can, and then talk about the final decision. But that final decision, because we've gone through that process, that needs to be supported. And that rolls up to the council as well.
Okay. During the pre-vetting process and during your staff interactions yesterday, you had the opportunity to discuss organizational culture and team cohesion. Thinking further about these concepts and the opportunity for positive change, tell us about a complex change you brought about in your prior organization and how you will apply your past experiences and lessons in Royal Oak.
Yeah, had good discussions about team and culture yesterday, and I can definitely see that there's a desire for desilozation, more cross collaboration, and I think I'll give one example of that, and that is really early on we had an emphasis on investing in mobility and making sure we're investing in cloud-oriented technology to put ourselves into position to collaborate. Now, we were early on. We were one of the first governments to go over to Microsoft 365 and go to the cloud and reduce our physical server space by about 50%. We did that in 2015. That was not only a cost savings, but that ended up being a huge productivity change. Also a big change that wasn't necessarily understood or welcome throughout the organization. That's a major change. But it's a major change because we predominantly changed the way we communicated and worked with each other. We, that put us in position to have 2 years of experience really working in a collaborative hub environment. And so when the pandemic hit, Ferndale was kind of seamlessly ready. Nothing really stopped. The business processes didn't stop. We were easily able to deploy all of our customer service channels and all of our collaborative team channels remotely on a dime. So that was easy. We'd also, switch to a VoIP product early on too, so we can just program everything. So that wasn't easily understood. How I did that, you do bring people in on the front end. You have to make sure that they understand the why behind it, and then understand the vision clearly, and bring them in as best as you can. The follow-up is a critical piece to that, making sure that you are intentional with, implementation doesn't stop at implementation. Implementation is a continuing process, and it includes follow-up, training, making sure that we're asking questions about that. But I'd say the bigger conflict that we're in today, and I think most governments are in this today because we're behind the private sector, that is work from home policy. So I believe strongly that is It's inevitable. The pandemic made that inevitable. And organizations need to tackle how to do that with equity and I think how to do that to be competitive, to get current and next-gen talent. Generation Z will be the predominant generation in the workforce within the next 10 years, with millennials like myself lagging behind. That's how they're going to expect to work. That's how they're going to enter the workforce in a hybrid environment. And they're going to look for employers that offer that flexibility and that environment and that can enable that. And if we're not doing that now, we're going to be far behind.
Okay, thank you. I acknowledge that you've touched on this topic, but the role of city manager can be a highly demanding position physically and emotionally. What strategies do you utilize to practice work-life balance?
I cultivate a lot of thick skin. Boundaries are important for me. So being one, with city council and with the community and my staff, certainly, we have to be upfront with boundaries and expectations. So I think that that's really important to me. I carve out focus time in my calendar. Focus time is where I can focus on strategy, focus on thinking about big decisions or solving complex problems. If you don't build that focus time into your calendar, it's really easy for your calendar to get hijacked, and you're always playing from behind on a global perspective. So I bake that into my calendar. So part of that is intentionality. And then the boundaries side and work-life balance, as I said, I believe strongly in work-life integration, and my family is my first priority. My kids are my first priority. And so I think it's just being open and honest about that with everybody. And, I'm generally always available, but I won't always respond to things. We have Red 10 issues where there's a crisis. I'm always on tap for that. We have a policy discussion where I've read an article, and I think that the city manager should read this, and we have a dialogue about it. That can probably wait till Monday. So I think it's just having those fair discussions about what is and what is not a Red 10, what's a Red 2, maybe a Blue 2, and having those conversations up front. But more importantly, making sure that everyone understands why it's important to me. And on the flip side, if you do create a culture where you're responding to everything in the moment, especially on the weekends, your staff will get burned out, because then your staff are going to expect that is the culture. And so they follow your lead. And so boundaries are difficult, especially when you're looking at the bottom of the organization looking upward. They're not always comfortable to exercise boundaries. And so you have to lead by example and get permission that boundaries are okay and reasonable as long as we're having conversations.
Good afternoon. So diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as environmental sustainability, makes for great sound bites. But Royal Oak seeks to put words to action. What strategies have you used to operationalize community values, and can you walk through some specific examples that you've used in your prior experience?
Yeah, the soundbites comment really resonates, and I know it resonates with every sustainability professional and every equity professional. So number one, if you talk to other people I've interviewed with in the last 2 days, you'll hear that I'm really consistent about the strategic plan. The strategic plan is, in my view, the most important document that the city council can adopt. I think there needs to be a lot of care with the strategic plan, and I understand Royal Oaks expires. So, should I be here, I'd be strongly encouraging us to revamp the strategic plan. But with the strategic plan, we should be updating a vision statement, making sure that it reflects the general aims that are in your other major planning documents, the master land use plan and whatnot. That we make sure that our mission statement is well defined, so I can work to build a culture with staff, because the mission statement is really how we're going to do it. The vision statement is what we're going to do and where we're going, but the mission statement is how. And the cultural values need to be adopted within that strategic plan. If we're not being forthright about what our values are, if we're not leading with those, then it's going to be difficult to build the culture behind it, because the cultural values on paper adopted in official city council strategic policy really sets the tone. So if a cultural value, in this case, Ferndale has the 4 I's, are integrity, inclusiveness, inspiration, and innovation. Those are our cultural values. Every one of my employees knows that those are our cultural values. not just because they're 4 eyes, but because we include them from cradle to grave on every process. If you go through the hiring process with Ferndale, from application to open house, which we kind of have a speed dating dynamic for every single position we hire, no matter what level of the organization, you're going to get an open house about our cultural values. You're going to hear that racial equity is important. It's a guiding principle with City Council. And then what do we do? What did we do to actually back that up? Well, we established our first racial equity action team, and so that was a great team that I love that the city of Ferndale did. We did that administratively. It's internally focused as of now, with room to grow into the external side. But really, we want to make sure that we are building mechanisms to actually practice what we preach in terms of racial equity inside the organization. So we created an inside committee that has an open application process. I certainly catalyzed it with our human resources director. But at that point, I wanted to be hands-off. I wanted it to be independent of the city manager. I didn't want them to be influenced by the city manager. I wanted to be viewed as a coach and a consultant, not as a director for them. And so they stand up, they have their own meetings, they create their own bylaws, they created their own mission statement, and they share that upward and they share that outward. But it's been a huge benefit for the city in terms of actually creating a system to apply the equity side of things. On sustainability, sustainability is a big subject, and we tackled this yesterday in our staffing interviews. But sustainability can be anything from physical health to urban tree canopy to zero waste. So I think it's important that I think because it's such a big, colossal thing, what I'd like to do is compartmentalize it or fragment it and choose kind of a focus area to get us going. So you're not trying to be a little bit of everything to everyone. And Ferndale, that just happened to be zero waste. So we really, we started with urban tree canopy, we started with policy, and then we moved on, more focusing less on, facility efficiencies, which are important, but that requires you to be well-resourced and capitalized. So we can't control that as much. What we can control is the zero waste focus. So we actually, we developed a specific downtown waste management plan that was focused on zero waste, and we're all in on zero waste right now. So while we still are exploring sustainability always, we're able to move the ball much further in one area, I think, than just a little bit in a lot of areas. And I think that's been helpful for us. And also, I think the more you're able to move in one area, the more you can demonstrate to the public and get buy-in to the public on sustainability principles.
Thanks for being here today. What do you look for when hiring staff?
Values fit for sure. On the bottom line, integrity is a basic core value that we have to look for. We get that out through our process. That's why our process is, some might view it as cumbersome. We view it as inclusive, really inclusive. So, from the application process, we will, you'll have an initial list of qualified applicants. That qualified pool will come in, and they will hear an open house from us. And they can choose, because when you're in an application period, you're dating each other. You're choosing if you want to date each other. And so really, we're recruiting for a position, but they're also determining whether we're a good fit. And so the best way to do that is being upfront about your values and your principles and demonstrating your work culture. And what better way to do that than have you interact with our human resources department during an open house where we invite a cross gamut of departments to participate at all levels of the organization. So it's not just directors, it's everybody, because everybody has an interest in understanding this person. And we're so bought in on the culture, and culture is so important to us in Ferndale that everyone has a vested interest in understanding and having buy-in of who's applying and who's being welcomed in. And so, through the process at that point, we've already kind of said, this is who we are, this is how we do things. And at that point, if you're interested, you come along for the ride if you have good qualifications.
Do you have a follow-up? How do you determine when it is time to separate an employee, and have you had to do it?
Yes. It should never be a surprise. So I believe strongly in feedback and consistent feedback. Feedback's the most important thing. As I tell my staff, I don't believe in good or bad feedback. Feedback is clarity. And so I'm a big believer in candor, and I don't think candor is a negative word. I said yesterday, candor has a root in brightness, candide, incandescent, if you will. So I believe strongly in just making sure that I have consistent feedback. So with all directors, at minimum, I have a monthly, and we're having a lot of feedback. And if there's issues, we address them there head on. And if there's opportunities, coaching, we address it there head on, and we have follow-up depending on the issue. But by the time there's a decision point where it's just not a good situation anymore, we would have had multiple conversations and we would have had multiple actions taken to kind of avoid that spot. And if it's unavoidable, it's just unavoidable.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. You talked earlier about boundaries. This is a somewhat different question. How will you work with city commissioners to build positive working relationships, including the setting of healthy boundaries?
Same thing. I have to have frequent and consistent dialogue with each of you. And so that's working with you on understanding your life. That's just as important as my life. I need to understand, how you spend your off time. When is your off time? What is your work like? And how much flexibility do you have in your work? But I do believe that we, in order to be consistent, move things forward, we have to be meeting on a consistent basis and having conversations because there's, I have to dovetail all of your perspectives to understand and make up, my understanding of city council's views, and I can only do that if we're having consistent conversations. I can also, that enables me to be a tool to give you consistent feedback from each other, because you have your own lives, and you might not always have that opportunity. So that you got to stay consistent on that cadence. And I think through those conversations, we develop a relationship and we develop an understanding of the boundaries. And it's an art, not a science. It's, we build it along the way.
And a follow-up question to that. Can you give us an example of a time when you had to say no, knowing that it would make your job harder?
No to, in any situation or to city council?
With commissioners.
Oh, okay, yeah. No would be typically, any, I think I called it a Bluetooth communication. So any kind of communication or concern about, concerns about negative trolling feedback on social media, to be honest. That's going to happen. Not all trolling is equally important. Not all negative feedback is important. It's important to understand, but it's not always important to react to in the moment. We got to recognize the weekend is where we have a lot of discretion time, and so there's going to be probably more activity there. And so it's important to know about it, but it's not necessarily important to respond in the moment to. It's important for us to understand it to determine, if it gets to a point where we need to act on that.
I'm going to continue to follow up. Sure. Social media is a valid example, but a time when you had to say no to a council member, knowing that it would make your job harder.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. There's some interest in a capital project, for example, a strong interest in a certain capital project. I'm going to be a little bit general about this, but there's a strong interest by a council person in funding a capital project that wasn't necessarily vetted by all of council. And so there's a push to actually include it in the budget process and the budget recommendations. But it wasn't ever fully discussed or vetted either on a one-to-one basis, because I'm having frequent conversations, and those conversations aren't bearing fruit any interest in this capital project. And so the answer is I can't do that, but I can advise you, if this is a priority for you, the goal is to build consensus with your fellow council people and then make that case. But outside of that, I can't put this in the budget process without a pre-vetted support.
Okay, thank you.
The City Commission is looking to move Royal Oak forward with a new master plan, sustainability and climate action plan, aging in place, and more. How will you help the commission set strategic priorities and stay focused as a group to ensure sustained progress while balancing human and financial capacity?
Yeah, the strategic plan is the vessel to do that. That's what I love about the strategic plan, because as governments, we have a lot of segmented plans that are specific for certain things, such as a mobility plan, land use plan, aging in place plan. The strategic plan, when we have that session, we should be looking at all those plans, and I should be preparing for you a list of those priorities, the action steps in each of those plans. And getting to your point about capacity, we have these discussions, and City Council during that workshop can start having priority discussions, and we can prioritize that list of, let's say, 100 actions, and we can prioritize in the way those that, that have, first tier, second tier, third tier priorities. And then from there, we start having a dialogue about resources, whether that be human resources or whether that be financial resources or legal resources or legal wherewithal. So we can have those discussions during the City Council strategic plan. And at the end of that, you should have a report that reflects the priorities within all of those compartmentalized plan. And the resources required to pursue those should be understood through that dialogue, and it should be published in the report so no one is surprised. Implementing a downtown composting plan is going to, for example, cost X. It's going to require us to have a specialist, someone who's a subject matter expert. It's going to hire us, we're going to have to understand the supply chain, and that's going to bring in a contractual service that we might not be paying for right now. So if we're serious about this, here's the time horizon, here's the resources, and when we bring this funding request to you in the future, there should be no surprises, because we've discussed it at length. It's published, it said, this is what we want to do, and that budget request is us acting. This is what we said we do, and we're doing what we said we do.
Thank you. Can you describe a situation where you face an ethical dilemma in your role as city manager? And how did you approach that situation? What factors did you consider, and what was the outcome?
Yeah, ethics are pretty important in a city executive. So this was a difficult situation just actually a few months ago. So we are looking at acquiring a piece of property to build a public safety headquarters. And there's been a lot of work that's gone into that. We were under a letter of intent, and the appraisal was taking a long time. We have, we're on a clock because we're purchasing this from a private property entity. And so we actually had everything negotiated and ready to go. And the appraisal landed at 5 o'clock, 2 hours before council meeting. And it wasn't the appraisal, I didn't agree with the basis of the appraisal, with their approach, with the appraiser's approach, while I respect their independence. But they appraised it based on as it is. And so that's not helpful if, our first goal is to build a public safety headquarters. And if that doesn't happen, then ostensibly we want to recoup our value for it, right? And so, their approach to this was to appraise it as is. So even though I received it and I knew that that would be a difficult thing to talk about publicly, we had to, and it wasn't on the agenda. It wasn't in the packet. So I sent it immediately to all of the city council. I tried to talk to them as quickly as I could in the hour that I had at this point. And then I just led with it. And I tried to explain, my views on it. And we chose to order a second appraisal, and took the vote on it. And the second appraisal had a different view and a different opinion, and that was more favorable. And, the thing you learn from that is appraisals can vary. It depends on, it's a human report built by a human. Well, they're all licensed and credentialed, right? But they still have a different approach to it. And so, it's informative, but it's not everything. But at that point, it was an easy decision because it was the right thing to do, but it was difficult in that there's so much work, and that I knew that appraisal wasn't going to be helpful in the moment. The alternative is to just share that with council and not lead with it and let council bring it out if they want to. But in this case, the right thing to do is to lead with that. All the facts have to be considered, even if it's a tough decision or a tough conversation.
How do you define, measure, and communicate progress on City Council's strategy priorities? What are some of the KPIs you have relied on in the past?
Yeah, the way to define and measure progress, I believe, we have, our plan is designed as a 3-level plan. So it's kind of like a waterfall. So first, the plan should identify outcome areas. In this case, the City Council strongly believes that a supportive infrastructure is necessary for the future of Royal Oak, economic prosperity, climate adaptation, if you will. So these outcome areas are defined. That's the top level of the plan. Then the mid-level of the plan are the projects that we talk about. These projects are I'll just continue with the zero waste example. So the zero waste is a project in a plan that then fits under that climate crisis outcome areas. So now we have an outcome that we want to achieve. We have an action or a project that we're going to pursue that feeds into that outcome. And then under that project, the zero waste implementation, that's where we have the actual action steps. That's the staffing level. That's the weeds level. That's where we're doing project planning and project management, and we're actually planning out the actions that are necessary and the resources necessary to achieve that project at that level. So that's your 3-level plan. Your top level is outcome, your mid-level is project, and your lower level is your action areas. And the KPIs really vary based on the project. I think we have to define that out at the outset of the plan. But ultimately, we use there's various project management softwares. But your KPIs could be, landfill avoidance in that case. It could be, cost related. It could be cost offset related. It just depends on what the priorities are for us, whether it be financial, whether it be performance.
And then to follow up, essentially we are talking about connecting the city's strategic plan to performance management. Mm-hmm. How would you institutionalize performance management across an organization that may initially be resistant?
Well, we're having frequent conversations, right? Part of this is the culture building, but the way that I've internalized it in Ferndale that I'd like to adapt here is I incorporate it into actual employee performance plans. So in Ferndale, one of the first things I did was revamp the annual non-union performance plan, and that is a 4-part plan. Each section is weighted, but your first part is City Council's strategic priorities. So each director is either responsible for taking on a strategic plan item in their area or adjacent to their area, or delegating that to their deputies for a growth opportunity. And then they set their project management plan with that. And they set their progress goals with that. But that is the first part of your performance plan. Then, of course, your job description. And then the interesting thing that we've done is include our cultural values. So when you're goal setting at the beginning of the year, you've talked about your strategic plan goals. You've talked about 1 or 2 areas you want to focus in related to your job description. And now it's cultural values. Now, how is the cultural value of integrity going to help you achieve a goal, or how will you approach your job or your year this year, focusing on addressing a perceived or actual integrity gap? So we can have integrity and still have flaws that jeopardize our brand of integrity. That could be something in Ferndale that we frankly struggle with, which is our dog park. So it's something as small as a dog park. If the dog park access control is not reliable for members who are seeking to use it on their own time, on demand, if that's not reliable, that's an integrity issue. And that ultimately that negativity feeds out everywhere. And so, that's a very small program that if not addressed, and if we don't respect the integrity of that program, that's going to harm our reputation generally. It's going to fester. So, that is an example, that would be an example of a way we can apply the integrity cultural value on the front end to improve efficiency. It also helps them understand generally, take a systems view of cultural values. And I think it's helpful to have that on the front end of the goal setting because it sets the tone and sets the intentions for the rest of the work year. And then finally, professional development is the 4th area. We require professional development. We require succession planning. Succession planning is really important for us. And to succession plan, you have to have meaningful and intentional conversations on development at the goal setting level of the year. And we goal set in the fall, and we review in the spring.
Mayor, if I may, how have you used data to communicate the city's accomplishments to the public?
Well, storytelling. Storytelling is a big deal. So number one, I prioritized communications heavily the minute I took office. And I think Ferndale generally has, but I uplifted the position of the Director of Communications as well as the Director of Human Resources. I uplifted both of those as top priorities within our org chart. So that's one, centralized communications. And communicators are communicators. Communicators are not data analysts. So making sure that we are taking a kind of a cross-collaborative approach to storytelling. So part of the, DPW Appreciation Week, this is a small one but overlooked. So our DPW Appreciation Week is every May. The communications department is really key in helping demonstrate the value visually. What we can do is actually look at the data and help people understand the breadth of what they take care of and how important it is, just by simply showing you the linear miles of water main in your community. It's easy to just take that for granted, but if you could say we're responsible for your potable water, and this is the amount of miles of infrastructure that the city responds to, and then we quantify, the challenges to that, whether it be water main breaks or investment in infrastructure, you can kind of tell a different story. One, visually about our people, and then two, about the responsibility about the actual infrastructure piece. It's easy to just stop at people, but what they're taking care of is vital to your day-to-day life, and we can overlook that often.
Thank you.
All right, back to me, back to this side. I know it's a little dizzying. What do you need from this and future commissions to ensure sustained success on the city's strategic plan?
Alignment's ideal. So, ideally, we're having honest conversations with each other, and City Council generally accepts what we're doing with the strategic plan and generally can accept the priorities that have been adopted, whether unanimously or majority, just consensus. We can accept that those are the prevailing priorities. And that alignment helps feed into the related commissions that are probably going to be working adjacently or directly on those initiatives with staff. And it's going to help me make sure that we're having coherence at the bottom level. As I talk to staff and we do the performance planning we're talking about, I want to be able to do so with confidence and insert these priorities in their work plan with confidence, knowing that we already had the conversation. We agreed that these were consensus or unanimous. And we're going to move forward with these with confidence and not feel like I'm loosely taking the ball away.
And a follow-up on that, how will you ensure that you get what you need from us?
Persistent feedback. I mean, it really is. It's just, we're going to have to be honest with each other, and we're going to have to cultivate relationships. And it's actually as simple as that persistence, but we have to be talking for sure. And so it's important to me to understand what works for you. It's important for you to understand what works for me. And we just have to be open to candor.
Okay. As we wrap up our city manager vetting process, and based on what you found during your vetting preparation, what do you perceive as Royal Oak's biggest challenge, and why do you believe you're the right person to address that challenge?
I think we got some work to do on the culture, the employee culture, for sure. I think there's been a lot of transition, obviously at the city manager level, but like most governments, and you're not alone in this, at the director level and the lower levels in the organization, there's been a lot of transition. And I think when you have so much transition, you lose some trust, you lose flow, you lose momentum, and you lose certainty. So I think, the one thing that I'd like to do is help stability and help bring certainty and help foster a culture based on empowerment and accountability, two things that are really important to me. I have 7 leadership principles. I lead with one. Everybody has the ability to be a leader. Leaders aren't titles. everyone can be a leader, and it's just us making sure we're living up to our principles and our cultural values. And I think the fact that I pursue that every day in Ferndale, and that's been a passion of mine since coming out of the pandemic, really switching into a focus on leadership. And I think my work there and my professional and personal development on leadership, having 2 certifications related to ICMA, I've learned quite a bit on that. The Cole Empower Leadership Academy was fantastic, and that really helped me rethink my approach to my role as a city manager, especially in times of transition. And, you know, in 2022, I think I transitioned 7 directors, 3 in 2 months. All went out for different opportunities. One just left because they were burnt out from the pandemic. And, you know, that happens a lot. You know, one left the sector and is not interested. And that actually is part of our challenge is we have fewer talented applicant pools available at all sectors, not just public safety. It begins with public safety for sure, but every sector it's pretty competitive, as I'm sure you all have found out since you've been replacing positions quite a bit. So I think the fact that I've dealt with that, I've dealt with turnover, I've had to I've had to adjust and be more flexible with some of our strategies. I have to really understand the mentality of that current workforce that we're trying to get, that Gen Z workforce, not millennial workforce, and not fight it, embrace it, understand it, and then adapt to it, and then explain that down into the organization. You know, I think I have done that, and I think, I know that I'm ready to do that again. Aside from that, I see there's some facilities challenges. I've worked a lot in Ferndale on facilities over the past 4 years, and I saw some facilities challenges at DPS. Certainly Parks and Rec, I've seen some facilities challenges. And so I'm very engaged in the budget process as well in Ferndale. I'm very involved from budget building to budget collaboration with directors to storytelling, which is a very important piece of the budget, to making sure that residents understand what we're doing, why we're doing, and they can hopefully translate it as easy as possible. So, you know, I've done that with facilities quite a bit, and I've done that with a lot of our capital infrastructure. I also think another opportunity, you guys passed a row bond I saw, and I don't know if the council's considered this, and maybe you have, but on our tour, it struck me that we have a lot of water infrastructure needs as well in terms of improving. So I'm wondering a possible opportunity for efficiency could be to issue revenue bonds for the water department for a 3 to 5 year infrastructure plan and leverage the fact that you have a road bond right now, so we can be improving our water mains along with those road bonds right now. It might be something to consider.
Just to follow up on that question about challenges, what's your favorite thing about Royal Oak?
What's my favorite thing about Royal Oak?
Yeah.
Man, you know what? Lilies. Honestly, it was the when I moved out this way, it was the first restaurant that I went to with my girlfriend, now wife. We love Lily's and the Royal Oak Theater. She's not from around here, so it was also the first opportunity that I had to really get her situated in the area, and we took her to see Passion Pit, which is one of her favorite bands.
Very good.
What questions do you have for us?
I have a couple. So on the question of alignment, I see that there's 4 seats that are up next year. I'm not asking anyone to talk about that, but I'm kind of asking about that stability in terms of vision and alignment. What are your thoughts on that? Have you had those discussions?
Why is everyone looking at me?
Because you tell it best.
No, we haven't.
Not looking to make headlines either.
No, what I will say is, and maybe being the veteran up here for, goodness gracious, 13 years now, sitting on city commission, is that we've always had a solid core of people that have tenure. And I think with that tenure has created a culture at the dais here of respect for different opinions, respect for different ideas, a general sense of values like integrity, like making sure we're doing the right thing on behalf of our residents, pushing the envelope further, tackling the issues that face not only Royal Oak, but the entire county, region, and nation. And so while I don't know everybody's plan for the next 4 years, we've had at least a consistent group of folks that honorably will run again. And if they don't, we bring on folks, and when I say we, collectively, the city, the voters, bring on folks that seem to share the values that we've espoused up here as a commission. It doesn't mean we're all the same. In fact, I'll say, one of the strongest points of this commission is that we all come from a very different backgrounds, professionally, personally, and I think that makes us a lot stronger. But what I think holds us together is our general sense of values and mission. And so, regardless of what will happen in 4 years, I think that alignment, at least in my experience over the last 12, 13 years, is that the body is stronger than the individual. So the people that tend to get put back on by the residents tend to reflect the values of the community, and it's just been a good cycle.
Okay.
And I'm not bashing any other community. I know some communities have struggled with that, so that's a fair question. But if you're asking for, I guess, my opinion, everyone's looking at me, that would be the answer I could give you to that.
And curious if each of you could just comment on one policy priority, just general category, whether that be, affordable housing, sustainability, equity, organizational culture, finance.
Want to go one by one?
It's really hard to choose just one. So I guess I would probably say housing is probably one of the most critical, and housing affordability and everything that goes along with keeping people in their homes.
I think with what Mike was saying, we all bring something different, so we all support all of these things, but we have our own niche. So mine is environmental sustainability and infrastructure, so Woodward, the railroad, are things that I'm interested in.
I think everyone's going to say a lot of good things here, and there's some good alignment on this too. We have a lot of good strategic plans. The city is doing a lot of good work right now. So while I'm going to agree with everything they say here, I want us to do a better job telling the residents about it, because I think it's important that we communicate to our residents what the city is doing for them.
Yeah, I agree with all of my colleagues so far. I think that's been an interesting point over the last 12, 13 years. Royal Oak has always been a center of attention. Sometimes we're the New York Yankees. Everyone in Royal Oak cheers for the Yankees. Everyone outside of Royal Oak sometimes doesn't, because we are, we got a little bit of everything, and, we're the best at whatever we do. I'm kidding. I'm the biggest cheerleader, though, for the city, I guess. But telling that Royal Oak story, not reacting to situations, but, being more proactive. But aside from that, just in general, I think public health, well-being, and safety is always going to be, for me, the underlying priority for the community.
So I think that the commission preceding this one and this one has done a lot of policy work, and you see that policy work driven in the studies that we've done and the plans that we've made. And Commissioner Herzog spoke about our sustainability plan. Commissioner Cheatham and I very passionate about our aging in place plan. We developed a non-motorized plan a number of years ago that probably needs an update, but I think there's support for it. And in fact, as part of our master plan process, the consultants have incorporated many of those ideas in it. So I think you've got a roadmap of what our priorities have been, and I see no reason to believe that that's not going to continue.
All right, going sixth, so I got to think of something new. But I think we all agree on all of these points. So I'm going to say the culture, and I mean both internally and the city staff, and also the whole community. So building that community up and building us together and building opportunities for the city to really be serving its residents in the best way, and getting the residents involved in that service as well.
And I'm not going to think of anything new, because my passion is housing. I think we are going through a national housing crisis. I think it's important that people who want to live in Royal Oak have the ability to live in Royal Oak. If they want to, service our city and work in our city, they should have the right to live in our city and have we should have a diverse stock of housing that's available to anyone that wants to be here. So housing's my thing. I'm going to steal it from Becca.
We're in alignment on that with Ferndale, obviously. Yeah. We're all working on toward the same goal, solving the same common problem.
Yep. That's the challenge, right? It's always, it's never just Royal Oak, because it's a regional issue, especially when it comes to housing, aging in place, demographics are changing. And so how do you tackle that problem, not just as an individual city, but how do you work with your partners and everybody around you to influence that regional model too.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we all had comparable policies and a comparable approach.
Yeah. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
Good. Any other questions for us,
No,
Mr.
I
Gaucho?
think I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you for your time today. Appreciate you taking the time to answer all the questions. And, I don't know, what do we have in store for the rest of the afternoon for Mr.? Okay. All right, good.
Oh, sorry, you talked about. Sorry, you're talking about for Mr.
Gotcha.
Chachak? Yeah, he's all set for today.
Okay. So enjoy the Tigers game.
Yeah, go Tigers.
Anyone know the score?
Yeah, what is the score?
18 TVs in the room. We can't have one.
Oh, I thought you were saying 18 to nothing.
Mayor, if I could.
Yes.
We are doing pretty good on time. What I would suggest is if we need to take a quick break, and then we could start early if you'd prefer.
Sure.
Because our other candidate is completed across the way, we can give a little bit of time to prep, take a little break, and then we can start really whenever you like. 1:40, 1:45, something like that.
Yeah. Do you guys want to start 1:40? Yep. Okay, let's take a quick break, recharge. We'll be back here ready to go at 1:40.
I got my water bottle. One of them looks on my
I know everyone has personal obligations. There's a Tigers game going on, all the fun stuff, and you're here today with us. So we're very grateful for your time over the last couple days. It's not an easy task, and it can be stressful, and we're very grateful you're with us today. Just a few notes on how we're going to run the interview. We have some questions here, and we're just going to kind of go around the table to ask the questions. We may have some follow-ups to get clarity on answers. Nothing really extraordinary or unordinary in the process, and just look forward to learning more about you, and we'll kind of kick it off from here. Any questions about the process at all before we start?
No, just thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, wonderful. So, first question. Please take these first few minutes to tell us why you applied for the position and a little bit about yourself without rehashing your resume.
All right, well, thank you very much. And again, thank you to all of the commissioners for this opportunity. Thank you to the residents of the city of Royal Oak for this opportunity. A little bit about me without rehashing the resume. So all of you up there have the resume, but I want to talk a little bit about why the resume looks the way that it does. And that will also answer a question that might come up later, and that is, why am I applying for this position here in Royal Oak? So I started my career in economic development. And in economic development, when I started my career, what I was tasked with was basically two things. Get more brick and mortar investment in the community and get more jobs in the community. And that is economic development. That is a portion of economic development, but it is very narrowly focused. And in doing that, I realized that if I was really going to be able to get more brick and mortar investment, then I needed to understand planning and how that worked. And so I went back to Wayne State University and got a certificate in economic development, which required me to take lots of planning classes. But then I also went to Michigan State University and got my Master Citizen Planning certification. And after having done those things, I was asked to join the City of Pontiac Planning Commission. And so I had that experience. But even still, there was something missing. And I realized that even with all of that, I wasn't able to fundamentally influence the decisions that needed to be made, not just to bring more brick and mortar investment or create more jobs, but to holistically actually raise the value of the community. Because at the end of the day, economic development has the word economic in it. And economics is a social science, which means that it is people-focused and people-centric. All of the decisions that needed to be made needed to be focused around people and making that area an area that people chose to be in. It goes back to my master's degree with a concentration in branding. What is the brand promise of the community? Why would anyone even want to be in that community? And there could be all different kinds of whys, but why? And being able to influence that decision. So I began on a journey to get to the point where I could actually influence those decisions. And I went to the state of Michigan and got more expressed focus in economic development on a broader scale. I went to the city of Farmington Hills, which was a city manager form of government, which is where I was ultimately going to need to be in order to get to the position that I wanted to be in. And then I realized a hole in my resume. And so when I got the opportunity, I went to Georgia to be the CEO, to be the person in the seat making the decisions, to write the job descriptions, to do all of the strategic planning, and did some wonderful things when I was in Georgia. But ultimately, Michigan was home because I'd never actually moved to Georgia. I commuted for 2 years, a plane every Monday morning, a plane every Friday evening. And I got the opportunity to come back to Michigan and run the Kellogg grant and be the assistant city manager in the assistant city administrator in Flint. And then I got the opportunity to come back home to Pontiac and be the deputy mayor there. But ultimately, the goal was to be able to really influence those decisions, and coming here to Royal Oak is that final step of actually being the city manager and really being able to make a push for making sure that everyone had a real opportunity for growth and advancement. The round table that I just left, I explained that I speak French. I speak fairly fluent French, but the reason why I chose French over any other language that I could have chosen in high school was escapism and the belief in liberté, fraternité, égalité, that if I could only learn French, if I could only be part of French culture, I could escape there and I could just be authentically me. Well, I got to France and that was not quite the truth. That was not quite the way things played out, largely because in France, I was perceived to be Algerian or Moroccan, and there is a whole cultural thing there that we won't get into, but it ended up being a disillusionment, and it was a catalyst for me to understand that if I was ever going to get to where I wanted to be, I had to just be me, and I just had to be able to work to make it possible for everyone to be themselves, because when we show up as our authentic self, that is when we are able to do the most good. And so that is why I would like to be here. That is why I believe that I would be a good candidate for this position. And I think that tells a little bit about me. I am very, very people-focused and people-centric. I spent my life in community theater. So all of the good and bad that comes with being a theater kid, you got that in me. The liberal arts degree, historical studies, which means that I am a big stickler on root cause analysis, right? It's not enough to just deal with the symptoms of the problem. We have to figure out why it even happened to begin with. And then the master's degree in business administration, just being able to understand that we have to have goals and direction. Otherwise, we are just sailing the sea, going nowhere.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. How do you define your approach to leadership, and why is it a match for Royal Oak?
Thank you. So I've had this question a lot of times, and there are many different ways of answering it. But I think all of those ways boil down to what I just said, is that I believe in people. Everything is people-centric and people-focused. And I need everyone to show up and be their authentic self. Because what really makes a team work is everyone bringing their full value. There are no right or wrong answers. We just need full participation to get to the best end result. Because of your lived experience, you are going to see the exact same thing that I see through a different lens. And until we put on all of those lenses, we aren't able to see the full picture. If you watch different TikToks or social media, there are these pictures where there will be one layer and it's just the color red, and then just the color blue, and then just the browns, and then just the blacks. And at the end, after they put in all the layers, it's a full picture. And that is what I strive to do with my leadership style, is to make sure that I get all of the different perspectives to be able to make the best decision with the clearest vision at the end of the day. And as part of that, I recognize that just as I had a journey to get to where it is that I'm trying to be, all of my employees are on their own journeys. And so the first question I have is, who are you, and what are your priorities? And how do we structure your job so that it allows you to get to your goal? because happy people are productive. And at the end of the day, I really am a servant, and I'm here to, yeah, I have the job title of management, but what really is management? My belief is that management is providing all of your employees with the tools they need to do their job successfully, and one of those is the space to show up and be themselves.
Hi. During the pre-vetting process and during your staff interactions yesterday, you had the opportunity to discuss organizational culture, and team cohesion. Thinking further about these concepts and the opportunity for positive change, tell us about a complex change you brought about in your prior organization and how you will apply your past experiences and lessons in Royal Oak.
All right, so a very complex change that we had in the city of Pontiac was creating a community development department. So when we first came to the city of Pontiac, and so a little bit of background for those of you who might not know. In this current administration, the mayor and all 7 of the council people at the city of Pontiac are brand new to not only Pontiac government, but city government. So none of them had ever been in a legislative or executive role in government. And so that is part of the reason why they asked me to come and be the deputy mayor, because of all of my experience in those functions. So we get there, we don't have a community development department. What we do have is we have a planning division, which is mostly outsourced, a code enforcement division, which is actually split between exterior code enforcement and interior code enforcement for rental properties. We have a building division, which is primarily outsourced. We have an economic development division, which is on an island all to itself. And so all of those functions need each other to function properly, right? So if all you had was planning and no enforcement, no code enforcement, you would have these situations where individuals come to the planning commission, say they're going to do whatever, and then you end up with whatever it is they do because no one is enforcing it. If you have economic development out on an island by itself, you have an economic developer promising, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to make that possible and this is easy. And then when the individuals and businesses come in and they're facing all of these planning regulations, well, no, well, the economic developer told me it could be done. And maybe it can be done, but maybe it shouldn't be done, or maybe it should be done, but it's not currently written in the planning documents that way. So we wanted to bring all of these things together to harmonize them and actually be able to see the forest and the trees, right? Because the forest is made up of all of those individual divisions, but each one of them by themselves as an island was not servicing the population properly. So that was a huge shift in cultural change to actually bring those, first off, to bring those outsourced items in. And then one of the biggest changes, which was a huge cultural change, but in the end, I think has turned out to be one of the best decisions that we made, was to take the exterior code enforcement and the interior code enforcement, which was only rental properties, take those positions and make them one position called code enforcement. And now I'm not sending out 2 different individuals to a rental property, one to say you need to cut the grass and one to say we need to make sure that your rental license is up to date. But now I'm just sending out one person who can do both owner-occupied properties and rental properties, and they can see the whole picture as opposed to only one small piece of it. It has been one of the things that the residents of the city have applauded the most. And I think if you ask the individuals in that department, although there was some hesitancy to do it to begin with, they now understand the value of it and are literally all in.
So I'm sorry, there was a second part of that question, which was how will you apply that experience and lessons in Royal Oak? Could you expand on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the catalyst of that specific decision in Pontiac was, hey, we have these disparate functions that are siloed and need to be harmonized in order to actually effectively meet the goal of what it is that we're trying to do, the service that we're trying to provide to residents. I have to admit a certain level of ignorance of not knowing what the issues are in Royal Oak, where the silos are and where there's opportunities to take to follow the forest and trees analogy, to take individual trees and bring them together to create a proper grove. But that same thought pattern is what I would apply to decision making here. What is the goal that we are trying to achieve? What is the service that we are trying to deliver? And how can we bring these silos together? How can we bring these trees together so that they're not individual, but to create a proper forest?
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for being here today. The role of city manager can be a highly demanding position physically and emotionally. What strategies do you use to practice work-life balance?
That is a wonderful question. And depending on who you ask, they will tell you that I don't have good work-life balance. No, so like I say that tongue in cheek, but let's just be clear, right? This is not a 40-hour-a-week job. I am frequently the first person in City Hall and the last person out of City Hall. But that being said, once I get things going, I generally do an hour in the gym every morning. So that's 30 minutes of cardio, which is swimming a mile, and 30 minutes of weightlifting. I have personal commitments that I do every Friday night. I know someone said that they looked at my LinkedIn. If you've looked at certain of my social media, you will see that my wife refers to me as her boyfriend. So I am, constantly going out and doing those things. And when I go on vacation, I go on vacation. So it is, hey, there are days that I am off and I physically cannot be at City Hall because I have to be in this other place. But here's my cell phone, call me. And then there is vacation. And when I'm on vacation, what I get my staff to understand is, hey, unless the building is burning down and I am the only person who can push the button to make the sprinklers come on, I am not available. So that is how I personally practice work-life balance, is that I make sure that I carve out the time for my personal sanity, which is that hour of exercise in the morning and really being on vacation when I'm on vacation, but also making the time to go to those specific things that I need to be at. So, for example, I told you I did the 2 years of commuting back and forth to Georgia. I did that because I wanted to be present for as much of the kids' activities as I could. And so now that I'm here physically, I am at every band concert. I am at every track meet. So that's my work-life balance.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Calfani. Stevens, sorry. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as environmental sustainability, makes for great sound bites. But Royal Oak is seeking to put words into action. What strategies have you used to operationalize community values? And can you walk us through some specific examples from your prior experience?
All right, that is a wonderful question, and I know I'm already long-winded, and this is not a short answer, so I will do my best to make it as succinct as I can. So for me, let's start off with, so being a linguist, words have meanings, and so I can't answer that question without first defining how I see the meaning of those words: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity is all of the different buckets to which we can separate human society, right? So we can separate by gender, we can separate by hair color, we can separate by skin tone, ethnicity, religion, place of origin. You pick a trait and we can separate you out by that trait. That's diversity. And the importance of diversity is, because we are humans and because we tend to segregate naturally, every one of those different buckets is going to cause you to have a different lived experience. Equity. Equity is understanding that diversity exists and trying to create social norms that do the best job possible to take away any negative effects of that natural human segregation, right? So if we know that something as simple as dietary needs, right? So you have certain individuals who, for whatever reason, are vegetarian, right? It can be a personal decision, it could be a health decision, religious decision, whatever. You got vegetarians. Equity is saying, hey, you know what? We are going to ensure that when we have public settings, we don't accidentally create a situation where the vegetarians are not able to get a complete meal. Inclusion. Inclusion is going back and looking at your equity and saying, did we create a process that actually achieved the goal of not discriminating against any one of those diversity categories? And if we did, owning it and changing that process and making it clear that this is a space, this is a place where everyone is welcome and included. So diversity, equity, inclusion, those are my definitions for diversity, equity, inclusion. And then in the workplace, we have to begin with the end in mind. And everything we do needs to be done through that lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, going back to the example of the picture and all of the different layers. We need all of those different lived experiences. And as we do our recruiting, as we sit down with members of staff and plan out workflows and work processes, making sure that we have asked the question and brought in all of the experience possible to get the full picture, and then take that information to make the decisions that are not only going to help us with our current situation, but are going to create a certain sustainability of being able to move forward and be inclusive with everyone, which leads into your question about sustainability being a hot button topic and a great question. And that is, if we believe in, science and different things, we understand that there is a finite amount of resources on the planet. And so as we make decisions today, if we believe that our community is going to be here 100 years from now, we can't just make a decision and say, well, I'll be gone in 10 years. I'll be gone in 10 years, but my kids won't be gone in 10 years, and my grandkids won't be gone in 10 years, and then they'll be here 100 years from now. So am I making decisions that are going to leave them in a place that is actually habitable? And even though we can't do everything, we have to do the things that we can do. So one of the things that I've seen here in Royal Oak, and it's really small, But if everyone does it, and everyone will eventually do it because that is how peer pressure works, right? One community does it and the next community does it and the next. But just separating out the different streams of garbage so that you can have even a small recycling thing. When everyone starts in that mindset, and then if we believe in that and we want a sustainable community, we don't do an upcharge for garbage. That is just part of the garbage contract, is that we are going to have a recycling program because we are making a decision that is not a decision for today, that is not a decision that is virtue signaling, but it is a decision based on a principle of what can we do, what is within our power to leave the world better for our posterity.
Just to follow up, can you walk us through a specific example that you've had in your past that
For
exemplifies that?
For both, or did I?
Either one.
Okay. So for diversity, a simple example from my past, when I was in Georgia and I was hiring up staff, I made my job offers, and the male that I had made a job offer to countered, negotiated. I went to the board. The board said, "Yep, sure, absolutely, we will raise that job. We will raise his pay." Both individuals had the exact same job description, so they were both coming in brand new. And the female candidate had already accepted the position and hadn't countered on the pay. And I understand certain dynamics. I understood what was going on. And so I essentially counter-negotiated for her because I was not going to start them on unequal footing. So I went back to the board and I was like, these are brand new positions. Both of them are coming in. They both have equal experience. There's not a reason why they should have different starting salaries. As time goes on and merit increases should change them to have different salaries, but we're not going to start them at different salaries just because of the dynamics of the world that we have created, where my male candidate felt more comfortable counter-negotiating his salary than her. As far as a sustainability question, right now at the City of Pontiac, I am spearheading a project to look at all of our city facilities and to see how we can. So we've made certain minor updates to the facilities to make them, we'll call it habitable, but we're really at a position where we have to decide, do we double down and reinvest in these facilities, or do we build new facilities? And my thought about the doubling down versus the new facility is, can we find a new facility that is going to have a lower utility footprint than our existing facilities?
Thanks for your time this weekend. What do you look for when hiring staff?
Wow. So two things that I particularly look for when hiring staff. The first is intentionality, right? So I can send someone to training to learn a specific skill. I can't necessarily send someone to training and get them to understand the nuances that I expressed about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and allowing people to show up as their full self. So there's a certain intentionality that I'm looking for of personality. How do people process the world? How do they think? How are they going to interact? The second thing that I look for, which is funny because most people would say it's the first, but for me it's really the second, and that is competency, right? So do you have at least the base skills to do whatever it is that I'm asking you to do. And if you don't at least have the base skills, do you have close enough to the base skills and the aptitude to pick up those skills?
I got a follow-up for you.
Yes.
How do you determine when it's time to separate an employee, and have you had to do it?
Yes. So it's time to separate an employee usually when it is clear that the goals of that employee do not match the goals of the organization. And the reason why I said usually is because there are some unfortunate times where we just have catastrophic misalignments that require an immediate separation. So I'll give you an example of a catastrophic misalignment. We had an individual who was stealing from the organization, and then they just had to be let go, right? That was, I mean, I guess you could call that a misalignment of goals, but something like that is a catastrophic instant separation. But usually what I find with separations is that the stated goals of the organization are not aligning with the individual's personal desires and where they want to go. And there have been times when I've actually had to let someone go, but usually what happens is a coaching up or coaching out situation where I've sat down with the individual and planned out like, hey, what are the things that you want to do? Where do you want to go? And how can I help you get there? And the individuals have decided that, you know, based on where we're going, this is not going to work for me. And so I can give you an example again recently from the city of Pontiac when we created the community development division and realign some opportunities. There were individuals who said, you know, based on this new structure, you have not changed my pay. You actually created a situation where the pay is the same, the benefits are better, the work environment is better, but I just feel a fundamental misalignment between what I want to do professionally and what I will be doing now. And that individual has left. I had another situation where I had an individual and they were having some performance issues. We put them on a performance plan and worked with them over time, and they continue to have issues of not being able to show up on time, and they just had to be let go for failure of performance. And again, that I would call that a misalignment of goals, where their personal goals just were not aligning with the city's requirement of time management.
Thank you, and let me just say, community theater, rah, rah, rah. Mr. Cafani, how will you work with city commissioners to build positive working relationships, including the setting, we talked about the boundaries before, including the setting of healthy boundaries within that relationship?
Great question. So the first thing that I would say is, what I find is a lot of times communication problems and consensus building occurs because there are two very simple things that are not set out at the beginning. And those two very simple things are, one, agreeing on the beginning point. If we don't all agree on the situation at hand, where we're starting, it's hard for us to pick a direction to move in. The second, if we don't all agree as to what the end point is, it's hard for us to pick a direction to move in. So to use a travel example, if we don't all agree that we are starting from Detroit, we don't know if we're going north, south, east, or west to get to our destination. All right, so now we've all agreed that we're starting from Detroit and we're not starting from New York. If we don't all agree that we want to go to Los Angeles, then we don't know what direction to go in, because leaving Detroit and going to Los Angeles is largely a westward journey. But if we were going to Atlanta, that would be largely a southerly journey, right? So now we've done that. We've agreed on direction, we've agreed on the starting point, and we've agreed on the ending point. Now we can have meaningful conversation about how to achieve the goal because we know where we're starting and we know where we're going. And now we can have discussions about, well, what's more important, cost or time? Because if time is the driving factor, then we're flying. If cost is the driving factor, then we're driving. And what are the nuances between that? And how do we determine, where to give the most amount of credit to? And we talk through those things, but first we have to set the parameters of where are we starting, where are we ending, and what are the important parts of the discussion for how to make the decision on what mode of transportation to use. So that was a very specific example of how I go about consensus building. The second part that I would add to that is everything that I do, I try to do on a basis of relationship and not transaction. So what do I mean by that? I call it leading with giving. Whenever I go into a situation, I walk into that situation and say, what can I put on the table? What can I bring? What can I do for the entity on the other side of this conversation? And why is that important? That's important because it builds trust. And it shows that I am not coming to the situation transactionally, taking, asking, what can I get, what can I get, what can I get? Because I'm not going to agree to any transaction that at the end of the day is not in my best interest. So I don't have to walk to the transaction. I don't have to walk into the situation with a transactional mindset thinking, what can I get out of it? I'll go to the situation in a relationship building mindset thinking, what can I bring? What do I have to offer? And then we have a discussion. And then we find out, do I have something to offer that is of use to the individual on the other side? And if it is, we do it. And then they have something that is of value to me, and we build a relationship over time. And that is what I have done with all of my executive boards, is to sit down and find out, what can I bring to the table for you? What can I bring to the table for you as an individual? What can I bring to the table for you as a body as a whole? And then we build a relationship, and then we have a certain level of trust, because when I'm coming to you, and if I do come to you and say, hey, this is a thing that I need, you know that it is not me taking advantage. It is me sowing into the relationship that we have built.
Thanks. And a follow-up to that. Can you give us an example of a time when you had to say no to a boss, an elected official, board member, knowing that it would make your job harder?
Wow. Yeah. There are, I say no to city councilmen literally on a daily basis in Pontiac. Let me think of, so the most recent example, literally the most recent example was yesterday. Yesterday we had a situation where there were homelessness encampments, one in one of our major parks and one behind a large commercial center. And we had a couple of city council people who were upset about the fact that the sheriff's department was called to remove those individuals. The fact of the matter is, American society has failed those individuals, in that we have created a systemic problem where we can remove them from the parks over and over and over again, and because we have not created a situation of helping them get to a place where they are no longer homeless, they are eventually going to end up back in the parks. And so I had some city council people who were like, look, why are you harassing these people? We should be doing different things to help move them forward. And what I had to tell them was, city councilmen, we're not just harassing them. It is, statistically an unsafe thing for them to be sleeping in the parks, whether they be sleeping in the parks individually, which is very unsafe, or they be sleeping in the parks as a conglomerate group. Less unsafe because there's a group, but being in a group setting has its own individual problems that are created. And we didn't just ask the sheriff's department to remove them. We actually had grant money, albeit temporary, but to put them up for at least a couple of days housing so that now they actually have a safe place to sleep. Are they going to end up back in the parks? I just said systemically they are. But what we don't have is the capacity to run as the city a full social service program that will take these individuals and give them the wraparound services that they need. However, if we can get them into a couple of safe nights rest and connect them with the Oakland Living and Human Service Agency, connect them with Lighthouse, connect them with other organizations that actually have the capacity to do that work, then maybe one or two of them will actually get set on the pathway to actually become self-sufficient. But the city, unfortunately, does not have the money to actually create and sustain that program.
Good, thank you.
The City Commission is looking to move Royal Oak forward. With the new master plan, sustainability, climate action plan, aging in place plan, and more, how will you help the Commission set strategic priorities and stay focused as a group to ensure sustained progress while balancing human and financial capacity?
All right, so this goes back to the example that I gave before about really asking, where are we today? Where do we want to be tomorrow? And then once we understand those things, going back and asking, inside of the journey of getting to tomorrow, what are our priorities? So as we look to talk about aging in place, one of the questions that will arise is, why is aging in place currently an issue? And what I mean by that is, why are our seniors not able to age in place today, right? So root cause analysis. What is stopping them from being able to do that? And then once we determine what is stopping them, I'm going to make assumptions just to get through this example. Let's assume that they're not able to age in place currently because the average home is a two-story home with the primary living quarters on the second floor. And we know as we age, going upstairs becomes more difficult. And so we need to create situations of first floor habitability. Okay, so now we have a actual root problem. Now there are different ways to fix that problem. One way to fix that problem is to provide funding to retrofit homes and make them totally habitable on the first floor. A second way to fix that problem is to provide senior living that is only one-story dwellings and meant for seniors, but we can keep them in the community. Well, that second solution creates a different issue of, we are aging in place in the sense that we are keeping them in Royal Oak, but we are not aging in place in the sense that we are moving them from the home that they have been in to a new home. And, what are the cost benefits analysis of that? Is that what the residents want when they say that they want to age in place? Another issue that might actually be the root cause of why they can't age in place is that maybe they do have living quarters on the first level, but again, as we age, doing yard chores becomes difficult for us, right? And individuals may not have younger family members that can come and do those chores. Individuals may not have the funding to pay an outside company to come to do those chores. So now the question is, all right, we, the city, are we going to put in place a program to fund the ability for the city to provide those chores at a discounted rate to seniors in our community? And so now we just have to balance out, our ability to reliably and sustainably run that program. I don't have a right answer or a wrong answer right now, but that is the thought process that I can say that I would go through. It's the root cause analysis. So the symptom is people are leaving the community. The question is, why are they leaving the community? And then once we drill all the way down to the why, we can then pick, so we drill all the way down to the why. People are leaving the community. That's the problem. We have to figure out why they're leaving the community. The end goal is to stop them from leaving the community, and there are multiple different ways to get to that end goal, as I just explained. And then we would go through an analysis to figure out which ones or what combination of those solutions can the city do sustainably, and then we would implement it.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi there. Can you describe a situation where you face an ethical dilemma in your role that you play? How do you approach the situation? What factors did you consider, and what was the outcome?
I will say that thankfully there have not been too many situations where I've had a true ethical dilemma. There have been some situations where I've had philosophical differences. I will say that when it comes to a true ethical dilemma, the answer is clear in my mind, has always been clear in my mind, and you can go back to other job interviews that I've had, and that answer is, if there is ever a true situation where there is an ethical issue and it is either, Kelfani, you will do this thing that is truly against your ethics, or you will not have a job. I will not have a job because I will walk away. That is just a fundamental core non-starter. Ethics is not to be played with, because one of the things that I say frequently, and I do mean this with all of my heart, is that every person, every organization has a brand, and the question is, are you managing your brand? I like to believe that a very strong part of my brand is that I am an ethical player, and so if it ever comes to a situation where I think that my ethics are at stake, I step away from the situation and make it a clear statement. As far as more real examples in work where I've had to distance myself from something, I think going back to the question from Commissioner Douglas and the example that I used, the question from Commissioner Douglas about having to say no to council people, and the example that I used about the homeless encampments. So the city of Pontiac has had long conversations about the situations that we do have with individuals who need housing assistance and what the city will or will not do. And I have been very clear and steadfast in my answer to the city council, which is, if the city council's goal is to virtue signal and say, hey, we understand that this is a problem and we want to symbolically put money towards the problem, that is a decision for city council. That is a decision that I disagree with, but that is a decision for you to make, and I will carry it out to the best of my ability. If, however, city council wants to truly take on that specific issue, that is a place where, at the end of the day, the city council will vote and I will follow the instructions, but I am going to actively tell you I feel like it is my responsibility to tell you all of the reasons why I think that that is an unsustainable practice.
How do you define, measure, and communicate progress on City Council's strategic priorities? What are some of the KPIs you have relied on in the past?
Okay. These are two completely separate questions. So question number one, how do you define and measure progress, correct? Okay, so the reason why these are two completely different questions is, let me take that first one. How do you define and measure progress? Progress is going to be measured differently for each item on which you are progressing. So if the issue is, hey, we have an underlying issue of, I don't even know what the right word is, because human resources, while it is something that I do, it is not my core functionality, so I'm not gonna have the right words, but I'll explain the situation. If the situation that we have is, hey, diversity, equity, inclusion is a problem in the sense that we don't have cohesion around why it's important. Progress on that front may be as simple as getting everyone to agree that there is a problem. The end goal may be, hey, not only do we want everyone to agree to this concept of diversity, equity, inclusion, but we want to have not just a virtue signaling statement, but we want to have a positive policy in place that we can work to say, hey, are we actually following, have we put processes in place so that this policy is being carried out and we are creating an atmosphere where we are allowing everyone, now this is not just workers, right? We're talking about the entirety of the city of Royal Oak. We are creating a place where everyone feels that there is a space there for them. Now that, right? So the first part is, can we even develop consensus? And then along that path is, well, now that we've developed consensus, can we develop a policy? And in the process of developing a policy, we have to first make the milestone agreements as to, what are the virtues that we need to extol in that policy. So that's one thing. How do you measure? So you measure it by breaking it up into smaller chunks of what are the steps that need to happen and how do we get there. The second part of your question was the KPIs. And so now it is a different question because it's not something that is theoretical, and although theoretical, it's also very, very real in that I told you the experience of, the reason why I chose to study French over Spanish or German or Japanese or any other language that I could have chosen to study, right? It was an escapism, and that escapism was based on my experience in America and wanting to be able to just be in a place, in a space where I could be authentically me. So it is very real, but it's measured in a different way, right? There's not a KPI that I can put to that. On the other hand, if we're talking about a financial goal, there are real, there's a KPI that I can put to that, right? I can say, hey, we need to reduce our deficit spending by 25% every year until we are no longer operating through using our fund balance. If we are talking about bringing our parks up to par, we can say, hey, over the course of the next 10 years, we need to see all of these improvements take place, and I can actually put a pin into whether or not those things happened. When we're talking about very, very real and important matters that are less tangible and more in the realm of feelings, those performance indicators become completely different and not quite, but almost impossible to identify, and they become more along the line of goals. Have we created situations where we can dive down into the root cause of why do people not believe the statistics in front of them? And then we can ask ourselves, all right, have we created communication platforms to inform them? Now that they're informed, have we created communication platforms to persuade them? But again, those measures are less precise than we are going to reduce deficit spending by 25% every year.
And then just to follow up, essentially we're talking about connecting the city's strategic plan to performance management. So how would you institutionalize performance management across an organization that may initially be
Resistant. All right, great question.
Reading is hard.
It's very hard. So great question, and thank you for bringing it back around. So understanding the context of the question now, let's go back to the example of DEI and saying, hey, we understand that there is a underlying fundamental issue in the community where people don't feel like the community is welcoming. And that is a key goal that we have, that we want to be a welcoming and inclusive community. How do you then build that how do you make that actionable? And how do you develop buy-in with staff, right? We're talking about staff, not the community, correct? All right, so how do you do that and develop buy-in with staff? Well, part of the way that you do that is first, going back to what I said about being very intentional about making sure that staff, first off, is having the ability to show up and be their authentic self. Because if I'm showing up to work every day guarded about something, some feature, some fact about me, I'm going to be hesitant to try and extrapolate and make decisions that allow other people to do that same thing. So that's the first part, is just being focused on people. And then once we're focused on people and we get at least some level of trust for them, going back to the idea of, all right, here's the overarching goal. How do your personal goals fit in and roll up to the organizational goal? And so we do that first by department. So whatever department you work in, how can your department actually help the city get to a point where all of the stakeholders in the city feel like they are in a welcoming space? So let's take something as simple as the Treasury Department. And everyone has to pay their taxes. Now, I have to admit a certain level of ignorance here for Royal Oak, so I'll take the city of Pontiac. One of the things that we are doing in Pontiac this year is we are translating all of our documents into Spanish, because after English, Spanish is the largest language that is spoken in the city of Pontiac, and we recognize that we have not been the most hospitable to that fact over time. We have also taken the step to make sure that we have individuals in every public-facing division who are fluent Spanish speakers. When I run across individuals in City Hall and in my interactions in the community, I do the best that I can to accommodate them in Spanish possible. We actually had a situation where individuals were out doing road work and they needed someone to move their vehicle off the road, and none of the individuals on that road crew spoke Spanish, and so I went out to the scene to translate for them real time to have that situation alleviated. But so making sure that our individual goals, our individual department goals tie up to the city goal, and then for the individual, so the person, right? So I work in the Treasury Department, and I understand that we are having this push to make first language Spanish speakers feel welcomed here in the city. And look, I don't speak Spanish, and it's really not on my personal goal to learn how to speak Spanish. So why and how am I going to buy into this? Well, have we, the city, made a situation possible where we provided you with a learning opportunity to move from being a teller to being an accountant? Have we provided an opportunity for you to take training so you can be a certified assessor? Have we helped you in your goals to do whatever it is that you personally want to do? Or have we at least made it possible and attainable for you to do that? Well, yes, okay. What we are asking you to do is to make it possible and attainable for these individuals to come into City Hall and to do the best that they can to reach those same goals. And okay, well, how can I do that if I don't speak Spanish? And how can I do that if I'm not going to try to learn Spanish? You know what? Here's this cheat sheet, and you can either never actually learn the language, but learn how to say these individual things on the sheet, or you can just point to the individual things that you know, and you can let them point back to you, right? But just creating a situation where they understand what it is that we're trying to do and giving them the tool to help make it possible.
Yes, Commissioner Douglas.
Yeah, follow-up question. So this question was a lot about data. How have you used data to share results with the public?
Yeah, all right. So, very first year in office, looked through the data at the city of Pontiac and realized that a Headley Amendment override had not been done in many, many years. And I did 2 special presentations at City Council, first to just explain to the public what the Headley Amendment was and how taxation worked in general. And then after a couple weeks, a second presentation to say, hey, if the city of Pontiac does a Headley override, this is the average cost that it would be to a property owner in the city, and this is how much money it would raise, and these are all of the programs that we would be able to put in place with those additional funds. With those 2 presentations, no additional push or anything from the community, we were able to get that override passed by over 60% of the vote. But that was largely based, and so we used the data. And data is important, and you can never ignore data. But the reason why it passed so high and so easily was not because of the data, but because of trust. Because, I mean, the data will tell you right now, anywhere we go in Michigan, well, not anywhere. Most places we go in Michigan, the road system needs a lot of money, right? And so I can put the data together and say, hey, all of these roads needs to be fixed. This is how much money it's going to cost to fix the roads. And if we do a road millage at even, 2%, this is how long it'll take us to fix the roads. And most places we go in Michigan, if I gave that exact same presentation over 2 city council meetings, it probably would not pass. And if it passed, it probably would not pass by over 60%, because we haven't done the work first to build trust and relationship between the administration and the voters, right? So as individual council people, you all have a certain amount of trust in the voters trust from the voters who showed up to vote for you. But as a body whole, as a council and a manager, have we built the relationship with the average individual such that they believe we are making decisions that are truly in their best interest? And I will say that this is not a Royal Oak problem. This is a general municipal problem where we have not gotten out to the community as not individuals, but as a corporate body, so that they understand and believe that we are actually working in their best interest.
Good, thank you.
Come to me, right? I lost track. What do you need what do you need from this and future commissions to ensure sustained success on the city's strategic plan?
Great question. And this is one of those times where I have a very simple, easy answer. The truth. What I need is for all of you to truthfully say what it is. So what are your non-negotiables, right? So what are the things that if they are in that plan, you are going to vote against it, no matter how much you like everything else in that plan? What are the things that have to be in that plan in order for you to vote for it? Because if that one thing or those 2 things aren't there, no matter how many other things are there that you like, you're not going to be able to support it. That's it. I need your honest answers to those questions, because without that, it makes it very difficult for me to work to build consensus with you, because now I'm horse trading and negotiating and doing all of these things in a bubble. And right, I can come up with all of these great elaborate plans and build a house of cards, and I don't have the key piece of information. This is where the data becomes very important. I don't have the key piece of data that I need to say, okay, if this thing is not there, the whole thing falls apart.
And just a follow-up, how will you ensure that you get what you need from us?
Ensure is a very hard word. I will do the best that I can to, again, build a relationship so that we have a certain amount of trust whereby you either feel comfortable giving me the information that I need, or you feel comfortable saying, Kafani, I can't answer that question. At least then I can go into it knowing there is an unknown variable, and now I can at least start plugging in potential answers to that problem, right? So, all right, it may be this, it may be that, it may be or I can have all of the contingencies. But if we have a conversation and you're like, yep, everything is good, it's great, I love it, and I go forward not knowing that, yeah, you said that because you wanted to be nice to me, and there's really this fatal flaw, right? I can't control for that. So at least if I have a strong enough relationship with you that you can tell me you don't know or you're not comfortable telling me, or if I have a strong enough relationship with you that I have one council person where currently I know enough about him and our relationship that I've been able to read between the lines a lot of times. I'm like, yep, this is all the things that he's not saying. But that took time. That took 3 years to be able to figure that out. You're welcome.
Okay. So as we wrap up our city manager vetting process, and based on what you found during your vetting preparation, what do you perceive as Royal Oak's biggest challenge? And why are you the right person to address that challenge?
Thank you. So I have obviously, been here speaking with you today, did a lot of speaking with the interim manager, individuals who work here, who I know in the community, all of the roundtables that have happened. And I will say that, in my opinion, Royal Oak's biggest challenge is not unlike many communities, and that is communication and trust. A lot of people will say, well, they'll disagree with me and they'll say, no, the biggest issue is finances, right? We can see the financial trajectory. And I would posit that while that is a huge issue and something that needs to be addressed and tackled, that is a symptom and not the cause. Why are finances an issue? What has happened over time that has resulted in Royal Oak needing to dig into its fund balance? And I would say that what has happened over time that has required that is we have not done a good enough job of connecting with the residents and building trust, communicating with them what the trajectory is and why we're making the decisions that we're making. We have not done a good enough job of understanding what the residents' the core values of the residents are, and then making the decisions to deliver on those requests. And that is why we are having the symptomatic problem of not having enough funding, because we have not communicated where we're trying to go and why, and that why is very important in order to get the residents to say, you know what, we agree and we will fund this.
Can you tell us why you would be the best person to address that challenge?
Yeah, so hopefully I have proven over the course of the last day and a half that fundamentally I am a communicator. That is what I do. I gave the example of, and I've told this story in so many different circles over the past 2 days. I'm not sure exactly what I've told to you and what I told to this roundtable or that roundtable, but I'm going to go back to the reasoning behind me deciding to learn French over any other language that I could have studied in high school. And so what it really came down to for me was looking for acceptance. As a Black person in America, there were all of these hurdles in front of me, and even in high school, as a student of history, I had all of these examples of expatriates, Black expatriates who went to France and seemed to have these amazing careers. The example that sticks out the most to me, because it actually helped me learn French a lot, is Josephine Baker. So I actually used her music to help me with my French pronunciations. But so anyway, I had this idea that I was going, not from a singing version, but I was going to be the male version of Josephine Baker. I was going to learn French. I was going to go to France, and I was going to assimilate into French culture. And as I may have said before, when I got there, the issue was not that my French was not good enough. It was actually so good that most people assumed that I was not American, but that I was actually North African, because I present as North African and from a French stereotype. Well, that meant that most people assumed that I was Muslim. And that created all kinds of different issues for me, because if you know anything about French culture and society, there is a very large cultural push about the folding in of the Muslim cultures to the French way of life. And so much so to where one of my colleagues, when I was teaching in France, invited me over to her home, which was a huge thing to be invited to someone's home for dinner. And she asked me what was my favorite thing to eat. And far and away, my favorite protein is pork. And she could not believe it. She was like, no, she's like, how is that possible? Like, how can, I'm like, oh, I was like, well, you can cook it this way, and I like it like this. And she was like, no. Not how do you want it cooked? How are you even able to eat pork? And I was like, well, why would I not be able to eat pork? What do you mean? And then she said, well, aren't you Muslim? And I was like, oh, no. But I realized after that transaction, I started thinking about other things that had happened to me as I was in France. And that's when I came to the realization that's when I came to my knowledge of my current definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I couldn't run away from it. No matter what I did, I was going to be who I am. And so I decided to make it my life's goal to leave the world a better place for all of the people that come after me. Building on that story, you can all see my hair right now, and I will tell you that I have a friend who laughs at me because I constantly notice people's hairstyles and different things, and did you change your hair, did you color your hair, or whatever. And so for the vast majority of my career, I kept short hair. I've never liked short hair. Personally, right? It's a personal thing because I like the ability to change styles and do things. And if your hair is short, like it just is what it is. You wake up, you go like this, you're done, right? With my hair like this, I can have it twisted. I can blow it out. I can pull it back. There are all different types of things. Like I can change it. That has always been my preference. But for a very long time, I would not do that because I was trying to meet a certain assimilation. And then again, after that experience, I realized that I needed to show up and be authentically me, and I needed to create space for everyone else to show up and be authentically them so that we could get to the best situation and the best answer for everyone else. And I think that's why I'm the person for this position. I am a communicator. That is what I do. And I think that what most communities need and what Royal Oak specifically needs is someone who can go out and communicate, understand what are the needs, what are the wants and desires of the population, and how can we take that and create a strategic plan that moves the city to a position where it will be here 10 years, 50 years, 100 years from now.
And just as a follow-up, you talked about the challenges that you see, but just what do you love about Royal Oak?
Well, okay, so there aren't many people in Metro Detroit who don't love downtown Royal Oak, right? So that's an easy one. But why? What is it about downtown Royal Oak? I love stagecrafters. So again, I grew up doing community theater, so I love going. One of my best friends is frequently in plays as stagecrafters. So I love going to see her in those performances. I love the walkability of the city. The location, right? So where Royal Oak is located in the Metro Detroit area is just an awesome opportunity for anybody trying to get anywhere in the region. From an outside looking in, and again, I haven't been here as a resident, so I don't know. It's just what I have experienced. from the outside looking in, this appears to be a community that actually embraces and wants to see, I don't want to use the word diversity, that embraces and wants to see people showing up and being their authentic selves, right? Because, and the reason why I don't want to use the word diversity, too often when we use that word, it triggers people thinking to specific boxes, right? Oh, I want to see more people of a different ethnicity. I want to see, more people of a different sexual orientation. And that's not what I mean. What I mean is that when I'm walking around Royal Oak, I feel comfortable. I feel supported. I feel safe. I feel like I belong. I don't get that feeling of being in certain places where I've been like, my existence is tolerated. And I don't want to be tolerated. I want to be welcomed. And I feel welcomed in Royal Oak.
OK. Avez-vous des questions pour nous?
Oui.
En anglais, s'il vous plaît.
Merci. Do I have any questions? All right, so my first question is simple but loaded. Have I answered all of your questions? Is there anything about me that you still need to know?
I think that's a no, the way you asked the question. No, I think we got, our questions were pretty, we did a lot of prep work ahead of time, and we wanted to be consistent with all the questions with all the candidates. So I think each of us had a say in these questions in terms of what was important to us to learn. And I'm looking around. Do you feel like we achieved that goal with Mr. Stevens? Okay, good.
All right. So then my next question is the question that every job candidate asks, and that is, when are you expecting to make a decision?
You want me to answer?
Yeah,
we are meeting to discuss bright and early on Tuesday morning. I think 7 a.m. is our scheduled meeting time. So we'll be collecting information. There's all of the things you've been part of. Our not sure what to call, consultant has
Roundtables.
Yeah, the roundtables, but our consultant is going to put some information and feedback together and get it to us, so we'll have a couple days to assess, and then we'll meet on Tuesday, and I assume that we'll have some kind of decision coming out of that meeting.
Or not. Who knows?
Who knows, exactly.
We'll see how morning people are, or who's not a morning person. But yeah, I think that's the goal. That's the next big step, is 7 a.m. Tuesday morning to say, okay, is there consensus? What direction are we going in? And if we still need more information, it could possibly take longer. But that's our first goal, first milestone.
All right. And then I'm going to say thank you to all of you for your time. But my last question is just if each one of you individually could tell me, going into this, what did you believe was the main trait or thing that you were looking for in a city manager?
Okay, let's start on this one. Let's put Monica in the hot seat now. Sorry, Monica, I did my best.
That's fine. I would say someone that is able to communicate the vision and the expectations of what we do up here to the community, to our employees, to residents, and then vice versa. Someone that's just able to provide that communication and that transparency between the two.
I think I'm looking for a strong and compassionate manager of our city staff, employees, someone who can build back the culture where we've had a lot of changes in city staff over the past few years. So things have been a little disjointed, but someone who can rebuild that.
Yeah, and I'll build on that to say stability. We had one longtime manager. We've had a manager here now for 3 or 4 years. And we have some new department heads. I mean, some good changes, key staff that have come in. And I really want them to have a sense that things are going to be cool for a long time. So that continuity, and I also just want to say that it's the top of the 6, Cleveland 5, Detroit 2. Tigers have the bases loaded with 2 out.
I think for me, it's really finding that balance of, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. We have a vision as a community where we want to go. We know we can't tackle every single problem at once. So looking for that, that individual that has that managerial approach, but also has that empathetic approach as well. Because it's not just getting the things done, it's how you get the things done. And I think for me, that's what, it's a hard thing to perfect. I don't know that anyone can perfect it, but that's what I'm looking for in terms of the questions that have been presented today, sorry.
So I have to agree with what was said on that side of the table for sure. We have great staff in Royal Oak who are all trying to advance us forward. And I think we need to give the staff a great leader who shares the vision of the City Commission and what we're trying to do here and can help them execute. They're really good at what they do and giving them more tools that they need. And then finally, I think that we need a communicator, someone to tell the story about the city and how we're doing it and why we're doing it.
My colleagues up here, I think Royal Oak's at this point where we've done really great, but we're gonna just level up, and we need someone that can help us culturally, internally, but also bringing us together in the community and work. How do we work regionally with all of the communities in Southeast Michigan? So that's where I'm kind of looking at our next manager.
It's going to be similar, but I really do also think that we need somebody who's going to come in and really be able to build cohesion among our staff and make sure our staff have the tools to succeed and are as excited to come to work as I am excited to live in the city. I want our staff to really be that excited with their work and feel fulfilled with what they do. And I also am interested in communication with the broader community and building trust between our government and our residents.
Okay.
Thank you all.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Stevens. We really do appreciate your time today. I know it's a weekend, it's a Saturday, and the question about boundaries is very relevant today. So we know that you took time out of your personal life to be here with us today. And thank you for all of your efforts in applying. And stay tuned. Tuesday, 7 a.m. We'll have lots of coffee, and we'll sort of start the next process, or the next step in this process. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you all.
Okay, that brings us to item 6. Before we get to item 6, I'd just like to say, Nate, thank you for all your help so far through this process. I think that we had 2 really good candidates that we had an opportunity to interview today. Certainly our work Tuesday morning is going to be really, really challenging. So look forward to taking some time to process and digest everything. And, I think this was very well organized today. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
And to city staff. I know we have Dennis out there, sitting out there, and everybody else that supported today.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mayor, I mean, your staff, the staff here have been absolutely phenomenal to work with.
Well, that's really good to hear. The candidates probably need to hear that too. All right, so this brings us to public comment. I see Ms. Wagman's here. She's a veteran of public comment. Do I need to read the rules? Okay, all right. So anyone wish to speak at public comment today? Yes, in the back? No, I'm just kidding.
That's great.
Okay, surprise, I'm here, yes. So I was happy to hear
both candidates prioritizing communication. That's one of my biggest things in the city is letting everybody know what's going on, getting input from the community and that kind of thing. So I was really happy to hear both of them mention that. But strategic goals were mentioned repeatedly. However, number 6 of 7, which is long-term financial stability, was not referenced in any of the questions that were submitted to the candidates. Last time, and without meeting that goal, much of the strategic plan will fail. Last round, the city manager of Oak Park, Mr. Tungate, brought it up in his comments that our budget is in bad shape. As at the last budget meeting, our CFO said we need to cut $3 million or seek other revenue, which means more millage, another millage. Despite the fact that we've had almost 1.5 mil increases in our Royal Oak taxes since 2021, coupled with back-to-back 5% increases in our taxable valuations in the last 2 years. And I would like to know what they would like to propose to fix that. It isn't communication, because other than the bus millage, every millage that you guys have proposed has gone through in the last several years. So the issue is overspending. One candidate prioritized values without mentioning capabilities for new hires. I think values are great, but if you don't know how to do the job, I think that should be the priority. The other one mentioned capabilities. However, he didn't familiarize himself with what City of Royal Oak already offers, which is we already have an aging in place plan. We already split up our garbage collections into two methods. So they've aligned themselves a lot with DEI and sustainability, but without looking at the rest of the goals, especially finances, I think you need to get that answer from these candidates. How would they solve that problem? Like I said, your strategic goals aren't going to go, most of your strategic goals are not going to go through without the finances to back them. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else, even from city staff? No? Okay. All right, well, we'll close public comment. Mr. Grachowski?
Yeah, your next item, discussion by city commission, that was put in there as a placeholder for you if you decided you wanted to have any relevant discussions moving forward. Understanding that you are meeting Tuesday morning to have deliberations and discussion as to a potential candidate and receiving additional information from Double Hall Solutions, our partner in this search. So that was really a placeholder. It's not mandatory. You have to have a discussion, but I wanted to give you the opportunity if there was something that you wanted to talk about in this process or even start deliberations. So that's why that's in there as the next agenda item.
We'll go with Commissioner Douglas and then Commissioner Macy.
Yeah, so just understanding that Double Hall has got, their consultants and team has got a lot of work to do this weekend, processing the results of the discussions yesterday, the community leaders opinion section today. So I'm assuming like bright and early Monday morning, we'll get a great big fat packet?
I think if I may, Your Honor, I think tomorrow is
okay.
the anticipated goal.
Good.
Goals are great, never always met. I know there was a lot of great information they want to share with you in that. So again, it was just meant to give you an opportunity if you wanted, but it wasn't anything other than realizing that there's a lot more information coming for you to really digest in order for you to have meaningful discussion Tuesday morning.
Yeah, I will say, I know that our consulting team and our staff did a lot of work with our staff in advance to identify their issues and concerns, and I'm very much interested in their reaction to the candidates that they've met with. So, yeah, absolutely. Not until I hear from them do I have any thoughts at all.
Commissioner Macy?
I just have a question. So, the candidates filled out questionnaires in advance of this and also a supplemental question. Is that public?
Mr. Mayor, if I may. Yes, that's all public. That's actually part of the public agenda packet that's on eScribe and on the city's website as we speak. All those questions
and the supplemental question are in that packet and I think getting to one of the public comments about budget, that was a follow-up question that was answered in quite detail that should be, I believe it's included in there, I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, it should be on your agenda.
Actually, I don't think that the supplementary budget question's on there. It is? Oh, yeah, okay, it's after each one, okay.
Correct, it's the last attachment to
Okay,
each.
I see it.
Yes, okay. So, we're there, thank you. Anybody else? We gonna have coffee on Tuesday morning? Yeah, coffee and refreshments of
Bagels.
some sort.
Okay.
Bagels, gluten-free gluten-free items as well.
All I need is coffee.
That's my
Coffee's
breakfast.
gluten-free.
All right.
Pumpkin spice creamer?
Oh, man.
Now
Somebody
you're
exit
pushing
him.
it.
Everything bagels?
We can.
Thank you.
make sure.
All right, we gotta go, Charlie's got a game.
I know, I got to get to my son's soccer game here. So, if there's no other discussion, and I agree with everyone, I want to, hold off on any initial thoughts, just document them to myself, and then look at the perspectives of all the other analysis that's been done and that's going to be consolidated, and then look forward to a very fruitful discussion Tuesday, those 700 hours. So, if there's nothing more, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Moved by Commissioner Macy, second by Commissioner Herzog. Discussion? With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. We're adjourned.
I'm gonna go catch the